One side will say, absolutely nothing is happening, and then, another side will say, this is the greatest program we've ever seen. And, I think the truth often lies in the middle. And I think, issues like climate change, this is really hard. It's really hard in Canada. It's really hard in other countries. But I found it, a little discouraging that where you're coming forward with absolutely serious issues which have, profound economic consequences, human health consequences, ecological consequences, and we go into a lot of sort of sound bites. And I mentioned before, there's been quite a bit of bullying on this file as well. I know that I was called an environmental extremist, which I find sort of vaguely humorous. But I think which is more concern is a lot of NGOs, a lot of civil society groups have been called environmental extremist and been dismissed out of hand, and I find that's not a very Canadian. It's not a very Canadian way that I've seen how public discourse in this country actually works. So it was on shale gas, yeah. And we just said the federal government has a responsibility on managing toxic substances, chemical products. We just asked the federal government, Health Canada, Environment Canada, what are the chemicals being used, and do they pose a risk? And those two questions elicited, I'm an environmental extremist. So, what do you do with that? I have no idea. I think you just go back and say, I think that science-based information and science-based decision is how you want to proceed in protecting Canadians. And if you're called an extremist by asking for basic information, then I think you just sort of ignore it and keep going. But it's sort of it's a worrying trend, particularly for those environmental groups that are not shielded. I mean, I work in the Office of the Auditor General. We're not. This is a very, very strong institution, and so I'm not worried about it personally, but it's discouraging as a broader discussion. These are really important issues, and I think that the advancing these issues is based on really strong, impartial, analytical work. Bringing evidence forward, bringing as much science forward as possible, and staying away from the mudslinging. I mean, just go and focus on sort of the bigger picture. And I think that getting distracted by those things can just lead to just sort of back and forth name calling, which is essentially what a lot of sort of discourse is on a daily basis. Which is why I think a lot of Canadians sort of tune out of discouraged what's happening in Parliament and what's happening with question periods. So